Welcome to the Calder Farmstead, your place for news, analysis, and shenanigans from the American Hockey League.
Face off one by the Condors, Jones, top, another point fence into the slot, a shot is gone! Josh Perry, and double,
left point, long drive, save, Kinetic, what a stop by Matisse with the left pad! Oh, there was a scramble in front of the net, and denied was Matt Schicker by a miraculous piece of net binding by Matisse Kinetic.
D-laner from the red line sends it in, Hofer into his net, he stops it, Hofer looking, Hofer firing toward the empty net, he scores! Are you kidding me? Joe Hofer, a goalie goal in the Calder Cup playoffs!
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out. Right side with Fair. Brooks Light cutting to the net. Fair, and let's go! He scored! He scored! It's over!
Hello, hello, hello from the sweetest place on earth, Hershey, Pennsylvania.
And Chicago, Illinois.
Welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast, episode number 118 for Thursday, November 3rd, 2022. If you were hoping for a podcast featuring tips on harvesting and storing root crops, we're not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast. I am Sean O'Brien from StatsTrack and the AHL's only league-wide analytics guy.
And I'm Sarah Avampato from Full Press Hockey and SB Nation's Canes Country.
And as always, we thank you for tuning in with us. And if you're new to hearing Sarah and I talk about hockey, we're going to talk about some news as well as dive in and discuss the goings-on of some AHL teams. We both watch a lot of AHL games. We're going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break that down. If that's new to you, you may want to head over to our podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're listening to us from, and check out episode 0. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries, which are going to come up today, go check that out. So you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes. And let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes being excited for a new Henry Cavill Superman movie. It's probably going to be bad, and it ruined The Witcher. You'll never get that time back. So next time, why not spend a little more time with us talking hockey? We've had some news around the league. This was a busy little week since we last checked in here. We have more trades and some signings of surprise here. Let's dive right into it. First one, the Providence, well, technically Boston and Vancouver made a trade, basically making a 1-for-1 swap. Jack Studnicka to Vancouver for Mikey DiPietro. There was an auxiliary piece in that. It was a fifth-round pick from last season, who I'm not too terribly excited about for either side. But main piece here is Studnicka to Vancouver, DiPietro to Providence technically right now. We talked about, DiPietro getting permission from the Abby Nucks and Vancouver to try and facilitate a trade because he wasn't happy there, and it was pretty easy to see why after Vancouver basically was just like, oh, yeah, that's right, we should play you in games. But just a few weeks into the season, here we are. The move to Providence, though, little surprising for DiPietro because it's, he was fighting for playing time in Abbotsford in the Vancouver system. And, well, I mean, Brandon Bussey, Kyle Kaiser-Soze, Keith Kincaid all exist in Providence in their goalie environment right now. I think it's pretty clear DiPietro has more upside than any of them, but the Bruins don't have to necessarily agree with that assessment, even though they did just trade for him. Studnicka, on the other hand, looks to be sticking in Vancouver, so that's a plus for him. Looks to be a nice deal. I've always thought that he had never really got necessarily the fairest shake by the Bruins organization, and development for the Bruins has not always been something they've super excelled at when it wasn't like a dunker blue chip prospect. Like, I don't think you get credit for Charlie McAvoy because no one was like, oh, Charlie McAvoy, they know. No, everyone was like, no, that's an NHLer, top 4 defenseman, clear cut from day one. Whereas guys like Studnicka or Jesper Frodin or Zach Senyshyn. Not so much. Sarah, your any passing thoughts on the more or less 1-for-1 trade here?
I mean, I think that Abbotsford's in a place where all they can do is go up. So I feel like it's not going to hurt them. And I mean, the Providence Bruins exist, so it whatever. But I feel like it's nice seeing this and another move we're going to talk about in a second, that Abbotsford's at least, and by extension the Canucks, at least trying to address some of the issues that they're having in like not having enough players who know what they're doing.
I think it's also like, even if you never see Jack Studnicka put on an Abbotsford Canucks sweater, I think it still benefits them, because that is another player for Vancouver that, just by sheer numbers, eventually could get sent down to Abbotsford for more playing time. And I think that bodes well for them, as they need more bodies at forward. But they did another move that kind of helped that out too. They traded for Ethan Bear and Lane Peterson for a 5th-round pick from Carolina, which is a tidy bit of business there. Bear is clearly going to stick with Vancouver. And Peterson, though, gives the Abbotsford Canucks an actual skilled, very high caliber AHL forward, which was not something they had a bunch of at the beginning of the season. Now a Kyle Rouse signing and a Lane Peterson trade there. And Abby has some offensive depth now, which should help them tremendously. So you don't have to, be thinking about second line center Chase Waters trying to create offense consistently night in and night out, because that's just not what that man is built for. Like, I like him a lot. He's a good, penalty killing, grinding, third line checking forward, but like, he's not going to put the puck in the net a bunch. Sarah, your thoughts on Abbotsford's kind of moves overall? I mean, we could talk about Rao here as well, because it all kind of is one. It feels like one big continuous stream of consciousness.
Yeah. It's all moves making them better, and like we've said, some of these moves are putting people up in Vancouver, which means that Vancouver isn't having to pull people from Abbotsford who maybe aren't ready or who aren't really going to contribute, or it's going to hurt their development or whatever. It's letting those guys who need to be in the AHL actually spend the time there, and not bringing up some guy who is, you're just going to put him on the 4th line for 4 minutes a night. Like, what's that going to do for you? Lane Peterson saw him in Chicago when he was there. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. Like, he just sort of existed. And that's a team that, we talked about last week too, that is just not clicking necessarily. And so, I expected more from him, because I'm familiar with him from some of his other stops in his career, and just didn't see a whole lot there with, and just not much chemistry. So, it's not a huge loss for Chicago. It opens up a spot there, and for Vancouver, or for Abbotsford, they're getting a guy who has a lot of experience and who maybe will develop a little more chemistry with his line mates there than he was here in Chicago.
If memory serves me correctly, I think he already has a goal and an assist in Abbotsford in like one game played. So,
that's right.
Yeah, doing off to bigger and better things. Last little bit of league-wide news here. Certainly a plot twist here for the Belleville Senators. They add 32-year-old Corey Conacher on a PTO. Did not have that on my bingo card. Corey Conacher hasn't been in the AHL since 1920. He's been overseas in Switzerland for the last 2 seasons. But I actually had to Google translate some news from, the National League in Switzerland. And it seemed like he was on SC Bern for 2 seasons and then got loaned to a different team. Not traded, loaned. Now, maybe that's Google Translate not understanding whatever languages they speak in Switzerland. I was like, Swiss isn't a language, I don't think.
It is now.
It is now? All right. But yeah. And maybe it wasn't a loan like we think of, but an actual, future considerations trade or whatever. But he didn't seem to be in the long-term plans for either of those teams. He comes back to Belleville, which makes sense. He played 72 games for the Ottawa organization. He's from Ontario, Burlington to be specific. It's about 2.5 hours outside of Belleville. It's like not a Toronto suburb, but it's not a Toronto suburb from my understanding. Although I'm sure there are probably, two angry Burlington residents who are like, we are not Toronto. Yeah. So I look forward to hearing from them. But, either way, that means, his family is probably close by. Still, Conacher's been an impact player at the AHL level for pretty much his entire career. So it's not surprising that at 32, it's very likely he's still able to get it done at a high level in this league. But we'll see. Being someone who's in their mid-30s now, I can tell you not everything, just comes flying back to you like it used to. But given that he was still reasonably productive over in Switzerland, I think he's probably going to be a good fit. That also comes as a huge boost to Belleville, whose forward group, when we were talking about them at the preseason, not looking in the best of shapes. Like, I still had faith, but it was like faith with a kind of like face. Like, this could be something. They need to get some steps from kids, but this could be a better team than we think. But yeah, now if I'm a Belleville Senators fan, I'm a little more excited, I think. Sarah, what make you of Corey Conacher?
I mean, for like the name's just a blast from the past. Like, definitely a player who I did not realize was still playing. A guy who you're not surprised that he went to Europe. I feel like that's where a lot of those kind of undersized players who can play but just haven't ever really clicked here or are past their prime here. They end up in Europe. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about Belleville later. But it's much like Abbotsford, they're doing the work to bring in players to support the other guys who are there. And, if you need someone to eat minutes and be a veteran leader example for your kids who are there, who you're hoping to raise up to the NHL, like, you could do worse than this. So
you can.
Yeah, you very much could.
I've literally witnessed teams do it this week. So, but we're not going to get into that. Let's focus instead on, some individual deep dives here. We have 8 teams that I pulled basically at random from a hat. And let's get started. As always, we will go east to west, Atlantic to Pacific. Kick us off here, Sarah.
We're going to kick off with what you're currently representing, which is the Hershey Bears. So Hershey, after a 14-goal, 20-assist, 34-point campaign in the 2021-22 season, Shane Gersich, he's 0 for the season so far. He's far from an impact player that the Bears rely on to score night in and night out, but he's someone who I think you really are going to want to see contributing on the score sheet. So what is going on with him, and do you think he kind of comes out of this cold streak?
For starters, I don't think that Shane Gersich is someone who's ever really started the season hot. In his 5-season AHL career, he has played 39 games in the opening month of the season. And I say opening month and not October because 2021 was not an October kind of season. But in those 39 games, he has 5 primary points in the opening month of the season. That is about 0.13 primary points per game. He has 64 primary points in the other 192 games of his AHL career for 0.33 primary points per game. So he's not good in that opening month of the season for whatever reason. A lot of that, if I have to speculate as to a reason why he seems to struggle with, a lot of it seems to be from his shooting. Shane Gersich is not a superstar, sniper, but the man can score. He's, I think, around an 11% shooter for his AHL average, which is nothing terrible, but that's, respectable. And his, in those 39 opening month games, he has 51 shots on goal, 28 of which are from the 18-19 season. So we're talking about 1.31 shots on goal per game. He has 354 shots on goal outside of games in that first month. That's about 1.84 per game. So we're seeing about a half a shot on goal more per game once he kind of gets, out of that first month, starts to find his groove. I mean, take last season, for example, October 2022, 2 shots on goal in 7 games in October. Finished the season with 150 shots on goal in 64 games. That's 0.29 per game versus 2.34 per game. I think that says a lot about what Shane Gersich does in October versus, getting his feet wet. Now, I mean, is that just random noise that I've managed to cobble together into something? Possibly. Or, maybe for whatever reason, he's not someone who comes into training camp ready to go and needs a little bit more runway. It's his 5th season now, so it feels like the fact that we're seeing this pattern means there's actually one there. But he also this season, he started out on a line with Borstrom and Sam Annis, but that lasted all of 2 games, and now he's pretty much stuck in the bottom 6, which is not a huge problem from a playing time perspective. AHL teams pretty much just by and large roll lines in the regular season, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. What does matter, obviously, is that Borstrom and Annis are not quite the same caliber of line mate as guys like Riley Sutter and Strome. What also matters is that Gersich is getting time on the penalty kill, which is good. I think that's a role he's done pretty well in, but he's not getting power play time. And as we've talked before on the podcast, power play time is key to getting, production on the score sheet. What's worse for Gersich is that it's going to be an uphill battle to get power play time. That first unit recently in Hershey has been Annis, Pilon, Vecchione, Scarbosa, and Nardella. That second unit has been Milano, Borstrom, Lapierre, Ness, and either Rubinski or Ethan Frank. Lucas Johansson's mixed in there a little bit, but that's a tough group to crack. However, Milano and Pilon just got called up, so he might get a shot this weekend at a power play spot. And this would be an excellent time for Shane Gersich to grab production in a third line, second power play unit spot against Wilkes-Barre Scranton, because that would at least, give him something to have like in his pocket, when he has those opportunities again, or when those opportunities open up. Hey, coach, when we did this before, it worked out. I put 2 power play goals in over the weekend. So this would be a very good time for him if he gets a spot this weekend for him to shine in that spot. Also, fun fact, I will get to be there on Sunday. I will be at Sunday's game in the Giants Center. My wife, lovely woman that she is, bought us 2 seats in section 106. So if you're at the Bears game on Sunday, look for the guy in the sky blue Calder Farmstead hoodie in section 106. Stop by and say hi if you want to, or yell at me about some Hershey thing in the past. Both are fine.
I mean, the yelling is key. Just more yelling. So I want to look at goaltending too for Hershey, because after an up and down season in 2021-22, Zach Fucal hasn't exactly gotten off to the start that you want to see from him. This year so far, he's given up 11 goals in 5 games, has a .898 save percentage on the season. So what is going on with him?
11 goals in 5 games. Some of them are off of bad rebounds is what I would say. Against Charlotte, he had 3 go in off juicy rebounds that I feel like better rebound control could have prevented, albeit one of them looked like it was off his mask. So not a lot you can do there for rebound control. Puck hits you in the mask. It's just going to go wherever it's going to go. The first one did hit a skate in front and deflected in, but the play got to that point because of a rebound that Fucali didn't control. So 6 of one, half a dozen the other. Against Hartford, the goal that Rydell scored was off a rebound on a wraparound. That was one that he needed to kind of have. Against Lehigh Valley, he kicked one rebound right to Jackson Cates. I mean, I could have put that puck in. Fucali needs to have better control on that rebound. The other of the goals that he's let in, I would say 4 of those off the rebounds you can pin on Fucali. The other at least 7 of the 11 that he's let in. And let's see. The one that hit him off the mask, that rebounded into the slots, also was on a delayed penalty, so a 6-on-5, kind of a fluke one there. 2 of the other goals are on partial breakaways, or in some cases a full breakaway. One to Denoyer. The other one was to Bobby Trevino. He did look like he anticipated Trevino to pass on this one and kind of got caught in no man's land as Trevino just ripped a beautiful backhand, but still it's hard to blame Fucali for breakaway goals. One was Brian Pino uncovered at the net front on a power play for Utica. That's not his fault. The other 2 were tips from the net front. Nothing you can do there. If you're a goalie trying to stop a puck that's been tipped 10 feet in front of you, you're just sitting there in your butterfly stance praying to the gods that it hits you. There is no time and space to react unless you are literally superhuman. You're just sitting there hoping it hits you. That's the best you can do. The last of these 11 that he let up was a 4-on-3 one-timer from Johnny Brodzinski off probably one of the most high danger setups you can hit. It went from below the goal line to the top of the circle and then across Royal Road for a one-timer 4-on-3. That's not a Fucali fault. Those are incredibly difficult to stop. So in summation here, you could probably blame Fucale for 5, maybe 6 of the goals scored against him. The rebound control is concerning, especially because it's been kind of a hot and cold problem for him in the past. But it's basically 2 bad games and 3 strong ones. Ultimately, I am not concerned here. Fucale isn't a goalie who's going to be dragging a team kicking and screaming to wins every night, but he's not some scrub that needs to be carried by a superior defense. I think he struggled a bit here and there with rebound control and consistency in the past, but that's true of basically every veteran AHL starting goaltender, more or less. Fucale is an above average AHL starter who can occasionally steal you a game or, botch one. I would say it's like a 3-2 steal to botch ratio, which I think he'd take as a coach. Most nights, though, Fucale is going to give you a chance to win the game, and by and large, that's what he's done so far. 2 games that he played not great in, a couple of goals that weren't really his fault. The Bears are still working things out here with a new coach, a lot of new faces in the lineup. Some are having bad luck, some are underperforming a bit. All of that said, Hershey is still playing at an 82-point pace right now, despite all of those things. Things are fine. This is still a very good team. They are underperforming as an 82-point pace team right now. I think that's okay.
That's going to be fine.
Yeah. Let's transition though. I felt like we did a little bit there on Hershey. Let's go to the other part of the state and talk about Lehigh Valley. Sarah, Lehigh Valley has not been terribly impressive so far to begin this season. I feel like we pumped the tires a little bit in the preview, but with caution, and it seems like our caution may have been the better choice. What have you seen from Lehigh Valley?
Yeah, this is a team that, I'm just not, I don't love it. I don't love what I'm seeing from them. I feel a little bad in that they're not a team that's going to be set up for success. They are a team that's going to kind of live and die based off of what's happening with the Flyers and the Flyers' depth or lack thereof. And there's just not a whole bunch of guys who, when I look at this team, I see super high-end talent. I don't look at the roster and see a ton of guys who are just waiting for that call up to get a top 6 NHL role. There's guys there that are promising, but the people who are performing right now for this team, their top scorer, at least the last time I checked, was Garrett Wilson. It's his 3rd season with the team, but he's basically a journeyman forward. He's been everywhere. He's been around forever. He had 6 points in 5 games. We had first-year pro Elliot Desnoyers, 5th-round pick. Elite Prospects described him as the kind of player who is like very Flyers franchise aesthetic of will selflessly run head first through a brick wall if that's what's necessary for his line mates to succeed. That is, if you picked me up today and sent me to Philadelphia and said, congratulations, you're now like the head of scouting for the Flyers, who are you going to draft? I'm going to be like, you want that kid. That's just who you pick. So he throws an exciting hit. He's a fun player, but is that enough to win every night? Is that enough to get him to the NHL? He's doing fine, but is he a future top 6 NHLer? I don't know. I think Cam York's probably one of their more exciting names on the roster, and he's been injured, day-to-day injury. I think they have, they keep saying day-to-day, but it could mean anything. He wasn't even necessarily supposed to be with the Phantoms this year. Everyone sort of expected him to go back up to be with the Flyers, but had kind of a poor camp. Got sent down. John Tortorella had some typically John Tortorella things to say about him. Who knows why, like trying to light a fire under him or whatever. But so the team's looking for him to just play with more confidence, be more aggressive. And you would like to see that, except for the fact that then he immediately got injured. So can't even see where he's going there. And a guy like York, it's an interesting kind of conundrum. And we'll talk about this with another team that I looked at later in the show. It's the question of, with your top prospects, do you want them to play limited minutes in the NHL? Do you want them to play, 5 minutes and get benched the first time they make a mistake? Or do you want them to be in the AHL and take on a bigger role, take on kind of your first line minutes and play the toughest pairings, whatever? And they're taking more of that route with Cam York. They're being a little more slow, cautious with him. So, frustrating if you're a Flyers fan. Maybe you're excited if you're a Lehigh Valley fan because you get to see some of these guys like Cam York. But, overall, the team itself, they are dead last in their division. They're 2-4-1-0, 5 points, 13th out of 15th in the Eastern Conference, 27th out of 32 in the league. And this is all just points, not points percentage. So obviously some teams have played way more games already. Despite some of the interesting things on the team, they can't score goals. They've scored 17 at the point of recording. They're tied for 28th in the league. So, there's interesting pieces, but they're not putting it together, and they can't put pucks in nets, which is how you win games.
And I think that was some of our concern from the preseason with them, that this is a team that has interesting pieces, but it's hard to trust them having success with A, the Flyers, B, their injury history, and C, their head coach, who has not really endeared himself to me, at least. Mm-hmm. I will push back on you a little bit. I do see at least, I think of Tyson Forrester as a future top 6 NHLer, probably firmly a second liner, and he definitely has work to do to get there. Number one, his skating stride needs some work, but there's also a knee injury that he overcame that was pretty ridiculous. So there's pieces there, but I think he's at least someone you could squint at right now and see a future in the top 6 in the NHL. Zaid Wisdom is someone who I don't think will ever get a top 6 role, but very much, I think his ceiling is probably second line winger, but I think he's at least a future NHLer. But I do agree with you by and large that there aren't a lot of blue chip prospects on this team. And to be fair to the Flyers, they don't really have a lot of blue chip prospects that they can put in the Lehigh Valley. Most of those guys either have kind of hit this weird wall like Morgan Frost, where it's you kind of know he's supposed to be in Philadelphia, but it never seems like he's really fit in Philadelphia. As well as, the Flyers at this point are very much in the blow it for Bedard sweepstakes because, and you also get a lot of guys that could be more interesting in Lehigh Valley, like Wade Allison or Tanner Lashinsky, who I think would probably be better suited for those minutes in those roles, not necessarily from a growth perspective, but from where they can do the most good. But the Flyers are going to, take stuff like that. Also, you see guys like Noah Cates, Kiefer Bellows too, both are kind of in that tweener category where they're maybe a little bit too good for the AHL, but not quite good enough to be 2 full feet into the NHL. But then again, the Flyers are very much in, but what if we weren't good mode? Which, they're given where some of their, development is, they're at weird spaces right now. So I see where you're coming from, but I do at least somewhat disagree that there's not a complete lack of talent. But it seems like they struggled with this last year, where we were like, this team will definitely be able to score, and then they just didn't. And some of that was bad puck luck. Some of it was they had 1 puck moving defenseman or 2 puck moving defensemen and nobody else. And then some of it was just good old fashioned bad luck with injuries. Tyson Forrester played 12 games last year. It felt like less. But it's. I want to believe that this team will turn it around and be fun, mostly because I think it's better for Hershey, it's better for Wilkes-Barre Scranton. All 3 of those teams are at least competitively respectable. It's not fun if you play a team that's 16 times a year and you're just beating the crap out of them. Nobody enjoys. Well, one side clearly enjoys it, but it's not as fun for going to the games and stuff like that. If it's we're here to get killed by that really good team. So. I think, every Batman needs a Joker. Every Hershey Bear needs a Phantom counterpart. So let us ship it up north here. That is our time in the Atlantic Division. Let's talk about where Corey Conacher just signed a PTO in Belleville. This was a team that we were a little concerned about, a little, on the ledge of whether they were going to be competitive and good or just flat bad or somewhere in between. It felt like they were one with a reasonably wide range of outcomes. Corey Conacher obviously helps that. But what else have you seen from the Belleville Senators?
So they are exactly as concerning as I think as we thought that they were going to be. Right now, they have allowed the most goals in the league. So that's bad. That is not the road to success. And regardless of any other good things that we'll talk about with Belleville, the fact that they are in this position of having allowed the most goals in the league isn't going to set them up for future, climbing the standings at all. There are some bright spots for them. And one is not only a guy who has a killer hockey name, Angus Crookshank. But he also has one of those like tearjerker backstory kind of things. So he missed all of last season. He tore his ACL during a rookie tournament game and did not play a single minute of real, games that meant something last year. So this is his first pro season, full pro season. He played a little bit after his college season ended in 2020-21, and did 4 points in 8 games. It was great. And so he's not necessarily someone who you're going to be looking to as again, is he a top 6 NHL guy? Probably not. But the skill could be there, but really he's a bright spot because of it's just a good story to see someone bounce back from that type of injury, especially someone who plays a more physical game like he does. It's one thing to, it's even just the fact that he's playing again. ACL injuries, we see them end careers. And so for Belleville, at least seeing him back out on the ice and seeing him succeed, I think has been really important for them. But overall as a team, they're very streaky. They won 2, lost 3, won 1, lost 2. Like, it's just very back and forth. They had a completely ridiculous game against Rockford the other day. They lost 8-2. And first off, Belleville was in Rockford, which was new and interesting and weird. Always nice to see different teams kind of make it over here, and Belleville did that. So that was fun. But goaltending was super optional in this game. Rockford had 27 shots, and they scored 8 goals. So you're the math guy on the show. You can tell me. I don't think that's good, though.
No, it's not great, Bob.
No. Midway through the second period, the score was 8-0. Like, again, second period, just bad. There was a ton of special teams work for both sides. It was a game that, super got out of hand. You kind of are like, okay, are the referees setting a tone? Are they sending a message? Like, whatever. Rockford had 12 power plays, scored on 4 of them. Belleville had 8 power plays, scored on 1. So it was just, at the end of the game, obviously I wasn't there, but if I were interviewing the coach, I can guarantee that the coach would say something to the effect of, burn the tape, throw it out. Doesn't mean anything. But you see that game and you're just like, what happened here? Nothing good. Nothing good came out of this game. They are a team also that has struggled with maintaining a lead. They have been in positions to win games and then sort of found themselves collapsing down the stretch, which is more concerning than a game like this 8-2, nothing to learn from it blowout against Rockford. It's more the fact that they could have won some of these games that they've dropped and just fell apart at the end. And so we talked about Corey Conacher at the beginning of the show. I think that is something that can help them. They also added Cole Castles to an AHL deal. He's a guy who has 355 previous games in the AHL, 55 with Belleville previously, and played in Sweden. And has come back over. So both of these guys have been around. They provide that sort of veteran leadership. They're known producers at this level and can hopefully just kind of help this team navigate streaks like the one that they're having right now of this win a game, lose a game, win a game, lose a game. Having that sort of steadying presence of a guy who's been there is going to be important. It's not going to help the defense and the goaltending issues that we're seeing that's getting them in this position, but if they have to adopt a strategy of outscoring their problems, well, these guys can at least help put pucks in nets for the team, maybe.
I think Castles will help a little bit on defense. He's at least been a little bit more of a defensive specialist in his time, although that I feel like has waxed and waned a lot. I've seen bits and pieces of him over his career where it's like some nights or some stretches he'll look like an absolute, Michael Pekka shutdown center on the third line on the PK. And then there's some nights where I've seen him just get absolutely walked before. And it feels like sometimes his claim to fame of the guy who shut down Connor McDavid in the CHL playoffs once is going to be like his calling card for life, which, hey, I don't blame the man. If I shut down Connor McDavid for 5 seconds, I would introduce myself as, hi, I'm Sean O'Brien. I shut down Connor McDavid once for like at least a photograph. So that's respectable, I think, but like I do think that you're going to see at least a little bit better from them. They were that kind of team last year too, where they were a little Jekyll and Hyde, where they would have moments where it's just like, what are you guys even doing here? Not necessarily 8-2 losses, but a lot of like blown third period leads. But then they'd have these like incredibly strong games where like they were able to just not necessarily overpower the other team, but like they hung around enough. Like they'd be going into the last 7 or 8 minutes down like 3-2. And like, even though they weren't the better team in the game, they managed to fend off enough attacks. They'd like pull the goalie, get a late goal, and then like win in a shootout or something like that. Or they'd steal a lot of points that way. They were a team that occasionally had a lot of tenacity to them, and a lot of grit, a lot of resilience to keep fighting to, till the end bell. But like they've definitely also had these just very random games where it's like, so we all agree in the locker room we're doing tequila and not trying tonight, right? Okay. And that's not usually what I'm used to seeing from Troy Mann, and obviously in previous stops in Hershey and even in some cases in Belleville. I have a lot of respect for Troy Mann, but there are definitely times in which it feels like he's not always in firm control with both hands on the reins of the team. And that can be hard at the AHL level, given all of the roster moves and shakeups that happen. But at the end of the day, I think this team, he does need to be a little bit better with them.
Yeah. And hopefully, we've talked about before, maybe they'll see more stability this year, and not have to deal with so many of those roster moves, because Ottawa is like, well, we have 2 NHLers, we need more. So at least they may have a more consistent lineup in Belleville. So we'll see. Let's move on, but we're not going to go very far. We're going to stay in the province of Ontario, and let's talk about the Toronto Marlies. So their penalty kill right now is 23rd in the league in terms of raw percentage going into Wednesday's slate of games. What's happening with the Marlies?
So the Greg Moore coached Marlies have never really been a strong penalty kill team. They were 30th in raw PK percentage in 2019-20. They were 11th in the COVID bubble 2021, but they only played 4 teams, a very watered down version of the AHL thanks to taxi squads. So it's hard to kind of view that as a legitimate season, even though it counts, all the records are there. But like, I think all of us collectively are kind of like, oh, that guy was a point per game player in 2021 and has never come close to that. I wonder how that happened. But 21-22, they were 25th. They're 23rd right now, as you mentioned. But I don't entirely put that squarely on Greg Moore's feet for blame there. Typically, teams have their assistant coaches run special teams. One takes the power play, the other takes the penalty kill. It's almost always if one of the assistants is a former player and was a forward, the forward takes the power play, and the forwards, the defenseman takes the D and the penalty kill. It's not always how that breaks down, but that's usually what happens. But I have no reason to believe the Marlies operate any differently than that. And then my guess would be that Snowden runs the penalty kill when he's not busy, dodging extraditions. That being said, I think some of that percentage is not telling the whole story here. They've given up 6 power play goals, but only on 25 chances. One was a 6-on-4 at the end of the game in Utica. Another was a 5-on-3 against Grand Rapids. Yes, those goals still count. They're penalty kills, but like a 2-man disadvantage is not really something that you chalk up to, especially when it's made up a significant portion of the penalty kills you've had in early season. Since the opening night against Rochester, though, because Rochester pumped them for 3 out of 6 that opening night, but it's opening night. That's basically the most random night in any sport is, the first week. They've been 16 for 19 since. That's 84.2% in terms of raw percentage. That would be 8th best in the league right now. Now, that's not to say there isn't room for improvement here. I think in watching their tape, some of the forwards have been incredibly sloppy at times and haven't always communicated well with each other of who's going where and when they need to interchange inside the check press penalty kill structure. And I say the check press penalty kill structure because if you're new to the show and haven't heard us talk about the penalty kill, every team plays basically the same penalty kill structure. It's called the check press or the wedge +1, where your 2 defensemen play like inside the dots. You have a forward that kind of hangs out in the slot, and then one guy who's the rover, and he and the other forward kind of switch positions every once in a while, depending on where the puck is. But basically, that interchange between the 2 forwards has not been great. They've been especially bad at defending passes to the slot and across Royal Road. a fair amount of what I just said, with the forwards and the check press as the slot and railroad passing lane is that second forward's responsibility. The guy at the top of the triangle there in the slot, his job is to guard, the slot and the railroad passing lane. That obviously needs to get better. And given the Marlies' not great history on the peak under Greg Moore, that's something I'm keeping an eye on, but I'm not hitting the panic button just yet. But I am at least looking at the panic button as I watch these games. But I'm not, slamming it down yet. I haven't quite got to hovering, but I'm definitely looking at it. Although the fact that it's at least looked better since that, getting pumped 3 for 6 by Rochester opening night, that at least gives me some, reassurance. But at the same point, I've seen things that haven't necessarily led directly to goals, but have led to scoring chances and are ultimately bad. Those passes into the slot, those passes across railroad, they're just not defending. They're not making that interchange very smoothly. They just haven't gotten quite exploited for it yet, but it's early. And if they don't fix it, they will.
So one player to look at with the Marlies is Semyon Daragachintsev. I practiced it and I still got it wrong. He started the season with 6 points in 7 games. But for the season preview, he was not appearing in this episode. He's been sort of enigmatic in the Leaf system for a while. Do you think this is a sign that he finally breaks out this year?
In a word, no. SDA or is, it's easier to call him there. Yeah, I know. Such a wonderful thing, me sticking you with the hard name to say in Semyon Daragachintsev. But he's definitely been an enigmatic. God, I could say Daragachintsev perfectly. Enigmatic prospect for a while, and that's always endeared him to certain parts of the fan base and some coaching and scouting staff, while also infuriating the rest of them. He's a very divisive prospect. He has some of the best playmaking vision and puck skills outside of the NHL right now, and that's not new. He's always pretty much had that. He can find teammates with passes through traffic with ridiculous accuracy. And if you're a Marlies fan who's seen him play, this is not news to you. He's also shown value in defensive situations, too. He's a hardworking back checker. Every once in a while, you'll see him make a Datsuk-like strip of puck carriers. And while his skating has improved a bit, his edge work has gotten better. I don't think his skating is ever going to get him to a respectable level in terms of just straight line speed or four-way mobility. That plus his lack of a shooting threat makes him very easy to defend, as he's 5'11", but is 161 pounds, according to AHL.com. That makes him about an inch or so taller than me and 25 pounds lighter, and I am not a big dude. So pushing him off the puck has been pretty easy, especially because he doesn't have the speed to put you on your heels or keep you off balance, and he's not a good shooter. That means he gets pushed to the outside a lot, and it also makes me think that he's going to become kind of a middle-class version of Sam Annis, undersized power play specialist, not going to crack the NHL because of his skating combined with his size makes NHL defenders just basically able to easily push him to the outside. High-level tools are there, but the rest of his game isn't at that level, and it doesn't seem like he's going to get much better at this point. And I say middle-class version because while Daragachintsev has looked good to start the season, 2 of his 6 points are primary, and none of the 6 are even strength. That asterisk on his production thus far doesn't really inspire that this is the season that he breaks into a point-per-game level of production like we're used to seeing from someone like Sam Annis. I think there's a good chance SDA has a career year and maybe hits a 50 to 55 point pace. If he plays all 72, I think he could probably make it to 55, which is still good. That's an impact player at the AHL level. But I think he's still going to be fighting for power play time, and he isn't as effective a producer at 5-on-5 compared to someone like Steves or Anderson or Gaudette. Rodion Amirov is slated to come back at some point, and he's going to be going right into the top 6 top power play minutes for the Marlies, and that could bump SDA down further here. So in short, I don't think he breaks out this year, despite the fact that I think he has some high-end skills. I think he stays as an impact player, but I don't think he's going to be someone that Kyle Dubas is oh, maybe we need to call up Semyon Daragachintsev here, see what he can do with. I don't think that he ever crosses into that plane where he's becoming more someone the Maple Leafs are looking at. I think he's going to stay firmly in you belong on the Marlies camp. His deficits as a skater and a shooter hold back his ability to drive play at even strength. And that puts a hard ceiling on whatever he's going to be able to do. I still think he's going to produce. He's going to get his. But I'm shocked if we swing back to the Marlies around a month and he's still hovering around, a point per game or like top 2, top 3 in the Marlies offensive stat categories, depending on, who's been called up and stuff like that. But I think that's a good place to leave. We could talk about the Marlies for a lot longer. I mean, everything is based around Toronto, right? So
obviously,
we could be here a while, but I think that's a good place to leave it. We are going to take a break here. After the break, we're going to talk about Texas, Milwaukee, San Diego, and Henderson, the best coast, the West Coast. If you're just here for an Eastern Conference team and this is your jumping off point, thank you so much for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Because even when we're late, they're still full of information, but there is a useful window to listen to our episodes. Also, make sure you check us out on social media. Links to all of that and more can be found at our Linktree page at linktr.ee/thecalderfarmstead. We're going to run some ads, pay some bills. We will be right back. Stay tuned. We are back from break. I have no idea what ads you just heard. I hope they were fun. Maybe a car insurance one. I don't know. But we are going to mess with Texas. Always a good time. No one has ever had a bad time messing with Texas. Let's talk about the Texas Stars. Sarah, they've been kind of a inconsistent mess, but also not been a total mess. It hasn't been bad, but it hasn't been great. What have you made of the Texas Stars thus far?
Yeah, they're very much like shrug emoji. Like I don't entirely know what to make of them. I even went back to look and see like what did we even think about Texas? Looking at them, and we thought that they were going to do a little better or a lot better, depending on which one of you asked. Like than the model, they're not going to win the whole thing, we don't think, but we have some hopes and dreams for the Texas Stars. And just right now, they haven't been super consistent, including just wild swings in terms of 2-game series. They played a 6-3 win. They 6-3 loss to Colorado. The next night, Texas won 5-1, and we're seeing a lot of that, of just night to night, vastly different outcomes with the same players, same team. They're also already facing issues with goaltending. Thanks to the injury to Jake Ottinger in Dallas, their goaltending is now just also a little bit of a mess. But players we thought before the season started who would be game changers are continuing to do that. Thomas Harley, one of the Stars' top prospects, 5 points in 8 games. The last game that he played, a goal and 2 assists, and was just, even when he wasn't getting points on the score sheet, you could see him setting up plays. You could see him making things happen. Just really impressive on what I've seen from him. Riley Barber, I think we're both glad that we don't have to see Riley Barber like on a regular basis against teams that we watch. 8 points in 8 games with Texas there. Matej Blumel, 6-game point streak right now, and is just, making things happen for the Stars. The team as a whole, their last couple of games against Grand Rapids, they had a dominant performance in their last game, although that's something that was also, I would pin as much on Grand Rapids goaltending and defense as I would the Stars being good. Grand Rapids they made 19 saves on 24 shots. So again, not great. They had 4 first period goals. 3 happened within the first 5-ish minutes of the game. 2 of those goals came within about 30 seconds of each other, which are the goals that coaches hate when you go out there and you get scored on immediately again. So not a great night for Grand Rapids, a really great night for Texas. But they just in general feel like a team that gets forgotten a lot. I don't hear them in the conversation when we're talking about playoff threats, cup contenders, but I think there's a lot here to like. And all they really need to do, looking at the Central Division, they just kind of need to keep pace with Milwaukee and Manitoba right now, because the Central's not really as strong, I think, as we're used to seeing it be. We knew Iowa was going to be bad. They're currently in the basement of the division. Rockford was going to be bad, especially after they're potentially losing Arvid Soderblom to Chicago because of an injury to their goaltending. Now Rockford's just sort of they had to go sign a random guy because they had no more goaltenders after Dylan Wells. Chicago is struggling to sort of generate chemistry at the beginning of the season. So Texas could do really well this year just by being at the right place at the right time with the other teams in the division kind of lagging behind. Special teams are just about average. They're sort of middle in the pack of the division for both the power play and the penalty kill. It's not something to be too worried about, but they are the second most penalized team in the Central Division, although that comes with a little bit of an asterisk next to it because they're actually in a three-way tie with Grand Rapids and Rockford. I think the Central Division just likes to hit each other. That's really.
I'm amazed that Iowa is not higher on that list, given who their coach. Well, what's his name retired? Cody McLeod. So that helped.
Yeah. He's not. He took most of them. So that's a work in progress for them. I think that they would want to figure at least one of those out, the power play or the penalty kill. Just pick one and be better at it. One thing I think is going to be curious to watch, especially knowing that they've had these sort of goaltending upheavals, is going to be Anton Khudobin's workload. He's someone who we know where he's at in his career. We know that he's in the downs. I mean, he's in the AHL, which is not where he is going to want to be, but it's where he is. Matt Murray, no, not that one. The other one was given an NHL deal because of all of the issues with Dallas's goaltending injuries. He's been called up to the NHL to sort of hang out. Khudobin's going to get more games, and we know he's capable of playing at a high level. We know he can turn it on. We know the kind of goaltender that he is, but is this the point in his career that you want him playing as many games as he's going to have to play if they're not going to trust, whoever the kid they just called up from the ECHL is?
I think it's Shield, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. But if they're not going to play him and they're going to work Khudobin as much as they can, we're already seeing sort of diminishing returns in his performance. His very first game this season allowed 1 goal on 31 shots. The most recent game allowed 4 goals on 11 shots and got pulled after 26 minutes. And those goals were not, we talked earlier in the game about Zach Vicali and would I pin this goal on him? A lot of those goals that I watched on him were goals that I was like, oh man, Khudobin of 4 years ago would have had that. And so, I think there may be some concern, or at least to pay attention to how long the situation goes on in Dallas. How much is it going to impact the goaltending with Texas?
I was wrong. They called up Remy Poirier, who let me quickly refresh myself on him.
I've heard the name.
It's one of those where I'm like, I know who you are, but I don't. Mm-hmm. It's not someone who comes right off the top of my head the half of the rest of the league here.
Right.
On a Dallas contract, they sent Shield to Idaho, but they didn't call him back, which is surprising. 2026 overall pick. Not a great career. Average size, a little heavier for being 6'2", but not someone I'd be jumping up and down to put in net. Mm-hmm. But still, he's 21 and a draft pick. He should get time. This is his first real professional year. He's played 1 game in the ECHL, so that's hardly something to gawk at. But yeah, I'm not as familiar with him, so I will get to learn. Unfortunately, or fortunately, sorry, maybe fortunately, that was wrong.
It could be great. Who knows?
Yeah, goaltending is basically made up, so he could come in and be an absolute star. We still definitely need to work on the Matt Murray nickname. I'm usually better at this, but I feel like I keep saying we definitely need a nickname for him, so we don't have to keep doing the not that Matt Murray. But that one I think will come to them. It's also at least good to see that the barbershop is up and functioning in Texas. I was very sad that Texas did not use our barbershop graphic. Anyone out there, if you're, from 100 Degree Hockey or a Texas Stars fan and you want to use the barbershop graphic, please feel free to do so. We tweeted it out from the official account not that long ago. Anytime I happen to catch Riley Barber scoring a power play goal and Texas tweets about it, I'm going to quote tweet it with the barbershop open for business. So you will not be, I did not spend all of that time making that graphic to only use it once. But
you'll have plenty of opportunities.
Yeah, let's move on from Texas. Let's stay in the Central. Let's talk about the Milwaukee Admirals.
So Milwaukee, a team that I have to watch 800 times a year, they've managed to outscore their problems so far. They are 17th in goals against per game, but they're 5th in goals for. Their all situations PDO is 99.4. So does that imply to you this style is sustainable for Milwaukee?
Fun question. I would not. I would say like their results are sustainable, but not in the most straightforward manner. So, as usual with my explanations of things, this is going to be a little long-winded and windy, but we'll get to the end, I promise. So the offense is definitely humming right now. In regulation, because I cut off overtime and shootout numbers because they're noise for predicting the rest of the game, they're shooting 10.3%, which is 15th in the AHL. That's a sustainable number in theory, but we've already seen some call-ups, and it seems unlikely that every one of Jankowski, Tomasino, Parsonen, and Evangelista spend the majority of the season in Milwaukee. I'm kind of suspecting at least two of the three kind of split time evenly. Which of the two? Sure. But I imagine one or two of them go for significant time in Nashville, whether it's sitting in the press box or actually getting on the ice. I kind of struggle to imagine that Milwaukee, without one or two of them, continues to be a 10.3% team shooting team. But however, the 89.1% team save percentage in regulation is 19th in the league. I think that improves a bit and kind of meets the other side in the middle when those things happen, because I don't expect Askarov and Cooley to stay as sub 900 goalies, which is what they've been so far. What's most been interesting to me from a numbers and eye test perspective, though, is Milwaukee's pace of play. They're currently fourth in the AHL in total shots per game, meaning both for and against. So stuff is happening in their games at a pretty regular basis. And having seen them play a bit in preparation for the episode, they've definitely been a much more fun team to watch than they were last year in terms of just generally fast-paced, up and down kind of hockey. They played a little bit more slow, grinding, sweeping style when, they're not first line of Rocco Grimaldi and Cody Glass were on the ice last season. I think if they're able to maintain that volume, though, you could see them weather some cold streaks and puck luck. But again, that comes back to the question of what happens when some guys take trips to Nashville. Is Carl Taylor going to want the team to play this same kind of back and forth, up and down style they've had so far with guys like Tomasino and Jankowski? If they're not in the lineup, does Carl Taylor say, no, we're going to keep doing the same thing, even though the talent on this team is not the same? I don't know. That's, something that's only Carl Taylor can really answer, because that could make that pace barrage, because offenses are ahead of defenses this time of the season across the league. So it's possible also that this is just good, skilled offensive players picking up on the mistakes the defense is making, and vice versa. And this is going to settle down. That's more of a kind of time will tell thing. But to actually answer the question you asked me, I think the results they have could be sustainable. I think this team has a lot of talent in a division that, as you mentioned earlier, is not that strong as it's been in years past. However, I think the way that they go about getting those results shifts from being kind of an outscore your problems team to a more well-balanced one, especially because I think the talent is a little bit better evenly distributed, and we're going to see the bottom half kind of catch up to the top half and meet in the middle.
So you did mention goaltending in there, so let's expand on that a little bit, because I think it hasn't quite been the entrance to the North American game that Predators and Admirals fans wanted to see from Yaroslav Askarov. 16 goals against in 5 games, .892 save percentage. I can tell you, after having watched him, that he made me nervous. So what have you seen from him?
Definitely had some struggles so far, but I also think there are moments in which he's stood out and shown, and you can see why, he's gotten the hype train behind him that he does. We've said many times on the show, the biggest transition for players and especially goaltenders isn't AHL to NHL. It's coming to the AHL from the NCAA, from the CHL, from Europe, where the game just isn't the same, but for very different reasons. And I think you're seeing Askarov struggle with some of that. Not every goal he's let in was bad, but he's definitely had his share of head scratchers where it's just like, I don't know how that one snuck past you. Nate Soucis's goal that Chicago scored comes to mind, where that went in, and I think even Jason Shaver was surprised that one went in. There was another one that Adam Clendenning scored, and it was a one-timer from high in the slot. But like, Askarov was in position and saw it cleanly the whole way, and then somehow just didn't make the save. I think even Clendenning was a little surprised that one went in, but whatever. Bad Hammy still got to celebrate. Overall, I think he still needs to work on some small things like chemistry with his defense. He's also had like some struggle playing the puck where it's kind of like he thinks the puck, is just going to leave it there or try and pass to a teammate. And there's been some jumbles with that. He's also seemed to struggle a little bit with fighting pucks through traffic, finding his angle against some shots, dealing with some of the chaos in front of the net that, things break down a little bit differently in front of you in North America than they do in Europe, where the rinks here are smaller. The game is more physical. You see a lot more teams just sending random guys to stand in front of you than you do in the way Europe kind of styles their hockey on a bigger sheet with a little smaller and more skilled kind of game-ish. But the players also in the AHL are better shooters in general, and that's why I feel like he's maybe underestimated some of the puck speed that's gone past him a little bit, and that explains some of why we've seen goals where it's like he was square to the shooter, he was on his spot, he was at the top of the crease, and somehow it just beat him. Mm-hmm. In the preview too, we also talked about Askarov possibly struggling early in the season and likely needing some time to adjust and get settled, and we are seeing some of that. So good on us for being smart and predicting that. But the Predators are also deeply invested in his development here. So they're going to have a lot of patience with him, give him all the opportunities he needs to adjust, build confidence, and make sure that he's doing things right. So I am surprised by some of the things that have happened so far. I expected him to struggle, but I expected him to struggle more with puck tracking than necessarily just getting beat by better shooters. But, not all struggles are created equal. And the only thing really right now that I want to see from Askarov is him get a deal with like Gillette or something to get rid of that needs to go. That needed to go immediately. Like I definitely makes me think that he doesn't understand English as well, because I have to imagine all of his teammates have given him shit about it and he still has it. But other than that, I think we'll see improvements from him as time goes on. If, again, when we circle back to Milwaukee in a couple weeks here, if we're still seeing the same things, then I think we can start to maybe not panic, but be a little more concerned than I am right now. Like, to me, he's not been the best, but I think that the good parts of his game have stuck out. He's made some very big saves on some very difficult shots, and he's made some of them look easy. Mm-hmm. And I think that is like, because I'm seeing those moments, I'm willing to let some of the bad ones where like that Nate Soucis goal just kind of, it's not great. That's a learning moment, but we'll get through it together. But that's kind of where I think of Milwaukee as being right now. We could continue talking about Milwaukee. They have a lot more fun things that we could dive into, but we got to move on here. We are going to the Pacific side of things, the Best Coast. Let's talk about the San Diego Gulls. New coach, but very much a well-worn coach there. How is he manning the Gulls so far, Sarah?
Well, right now they're just straight up not having a good time. The Gulls are 3-5-0-0. I actually had to update this as we were recording because they lost a game while we were recording. So not great. 8th in the Pacific. And they're already seeing some big losses. They had an 8-5 loss to Grand Rapids, 5-1 to Ontario, 7-3 to Abbotsford. And, given all we've said about Abbotsford, I feel like if they're a team you're losing big to, something has gone significantly wrong with you. They also have to deal with the fact that Josh Healy just got suspended for 4 games for an illegal check to the head, Phil DiGiuseppe in Abbotsford. So I feel like the AHL getting suspended for 4 games in the AHL, you had to have done something significantly unacceptable.
Did you by any chance see the replay of what happened there?
Mm-mm.
Don't get me wrong. It was not that was not a like, oh man, I don't know how to go. You did that thing. I thought 4 games. I'm fine with 4 games. I'm much more wield the band hammer kind of disciplinarian than I think Haley Moore is, which is understandable. And we talked about that in our interview with her, but it was one where I thought 4, like I was surprised that he got 4. Like I'm not completely familiar with Josh Healy's suspension history. So this may have been a string of events that's happened that got him to 4 right away. But it was definitely one of those where I'm like, buddy, you
shouldn't have
know well before you did that,
right.
that was not going to go in your favor.
Yeah. So that's already kind of messing them up in terms of, ice time distribution and who's playing where. Having to work without him for 4 games is putting them in a bit of a pickle, I guess. There was one player who we were excited to see in San Diego, Rocco Grimaldi, who, like, I preface this by saying that I know that everything I'm going to say right now is like contradictory, but watching him play, he hasn't been the same Rocco Grimaldi that we're used to seeing in other stops in his career. He's been very consistent at the AHL level throughout his career, so it's bizarre to see him sort of struggle to make a consistent impact in games. He's starting to be a little more involved, starting to kind of come alive, and getting him going is going to be crucial for the Gulls. Now, why this is contradictory, he has 8 points in 6 games. So you look at that, you're like, well, but that's great. One of those games he had 2 points. One of those games he had 3 points. And we're just not seeing the same kind of shift-to-shift, game-to-game consistency from him that I think we're used to seeing, in his time with Milwaukee and the time in other stops in his career. I think he's getting there, and it could just be chemistry with line mates, new coach, whatever. But haven't seen him have that, game impact that we're used to seeing. There are interesting players and prospects on this team. Pavel Regenda is one to keep an eye on. He's a 6'3" winger. He played 5 games with the Ducks already, and they just sent him down. Ducks fans are not excited about this because he has been, for the Ducks, who have been also not having a good time this season, for Ducks fans, he has been kind of a bright spot. He's creative. He makes plays happen. And just, is kind of playing with that passion you want to see from your young players. But he kept being a healthy scratch to the point where they actually played 11 forward, 7 defense, and just left him off for
jeez, that's
because Ducks, basically. I think the team's thought is that it's more important to have him playing significant minutes with San Diego than it is to have him sitting on the bench or in the press box with the NHL. And he's already making an impact in the AHL. He played his first AHL game tonight as we have been recording. And in that game, he already scored his first goal in North America. So, so great for him to be taking advantage of this opportunity with the Gulls. But, obviously Ducks fans would prefer him not be there. A player that I think Ducks fans and Gulls fans want to see more from is Jacob Perreault. He's one of their more promising prospects. He has a great shot when he uses it, but, people want to see him in the NHL, but just he's not there yet. I think he needs more kind of seasoning time. And, despite how exciting he has been throughout his time with the Gulls and the Ducks, he's not ready. And I think people need to be patient with him, especially knowing the situation the Ducks are in of being not very good right now, that it's better to have him with the Gulls, who I think have a better chance of rebounding and climbing back up the standings than the Ducks do at this point. Defense, again, is going to be sort of a mess for them, largely because of the injury to Jamie Drysdale in Anaheim. He's going to be out for a while, which is going to cause some chaos for San Diego, as well as they all try to figure out how to adjust and go forward with who's going to be playing up in the NHL. But I think the biggest key for the Gulls season, aside from all these prospects, aside from any chaos they're experiencing, is Lukas Dostal in net for them. He's someone who the organization is kind of looking at as the goaltender of the future, and they need him to step up and be that guy. He's been okay this season, but we've seen him be dominant before. I have seen him make saves that you're like, I have no idea how you just did that. And he hasn't consistently been that yet. And, for the good of the Gulls, for his future, looking at the net situation in Anaheim, they want to see more from him. And right now it's the beginning of the season, it's early, but, as we've said about other things, if we're back here in a couple of months and we're still looking at his numbers and going, not great, they're going to have maybe a bigger issue.
Yeah, I think too with Dostal, like you can clearly put his future and John Gibson's future on the same trajectory. Because if Dostal was putting up, dominant performances night in and night out on the goals, you can just wave goodbye to John Gibson. Yeah. But that's not been the case, and I think that's what's kept. I mean, more so than, obviously teams have to agree to a trade and that kind of thing. I think that's been the bigger piece of what's kept Gibson in Anaheim, is that they're like, well, we think that Dostal can be basically a 5 years younger John Gibson, but he hasn't quite nailed that, that down in our minds. Like, he's shown flashes. We've seen him make ridiculous saves. Someone even picked him to upset the Reign last season in the first round of the playoffs like an idiot, but we won't talk about who that was. But it's definitely been an interesting one. And I looked quickly at Rocco Grimaldi's stats from this season so far, and I definitely can see pieces of what you're saying there. He's usually a high volume shooter, but in 2 games that he played this year, he had 18 shots on goal, and then the rest of them he has 2 or 3, which 2 or 3 is not nothing. That's still high volume shooting. But to see that, like, 2 games he played, he put up genuinely 11 shots on goal in one and 8 in the other, and then has kind of not, found that, like, I can see, what you're saying from the eye test in the numbers test. And that's interesting, especially as he's definitely someone who's going to, you can only keep that man down for so long.
Right.
I think inevitably he's going to kind of find that chemistry and break through. But I think it's interesting that we're not quite seeing the same, from him yet, even though on the score sheet, it looks like that's what you would be expecting.
Yeah.
Peralta's always been an interesting one too. He's someone who struggled on and off a lot. I almost included Pavel Regenda in the preview, but it was another one of those. I'm like, we have so many people in here already. I don't know whether or not we can count Briard as a defenseman or a forward again, because who knows what happens there.
Don't know.
So he's the one that got, and I was like, but he's on the Ducks right now, so I have an easy way to just slash another person that I don't. But yeah, I think he's definitely going to be an interesting one. And I've heard, like, in quiet rumblings from Ducks fans in general around the internet that they've been really excited with Pavel Regenda, and we're like, why is he not in the lineup? But he's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on for sure. Also, I say this almost every time I feel like we cover the Gulls, but those, like, powder blue jerseys they have, permanent. Those should be the home jerseys. Just slap the regular Gulls logo on the front of that bad boy. Top 3 jersey in the league.
Done.
Hands down.
Done.
And they won't do it. They're scared. All right. Let's move. No, this is east. I learned geography this time. San Diego is definitely west of Henderson.
Yes, for real.
Let's go to the desert and gamble it away.
So Henderson is a team that we were both pretty high on coming into the season. But the Henderson Silver Knights have not gotten off to a really great start to the season. They are 2-6 with a -4 goal differential. They are dead last in the AHL standings in both the Pacific Division and the league as a whole. So what is going on with the Silver Knights?
Yeah, they are kind of like the Gulls, just not having a good time. And let's start with some obvious ones here of what's going on. They're all situations. PDO is 96.6. If memory serves me correctly, that is the second worst in the AHL as of Wednesday day. So not counting the Wednesday night games that have been played already or are being played right now. They're 23rd in team save percentage with 88%, which that's not great. They are 28th in team shooting percentage with 8.5. And while that number isn't sustainable in a good way for the Knights, having seen a tape, seen their tape a little bit. I tried to watch the San Jose Barracuda games and literally could not get over the fact that there was no score bug and I had no way to I didn't watch much of those, but I watched a bunch of the other tape. The Silver Knights are terrible in transition right now. And I mean all facets of transition. It's just a slop fest on breakouts through the neutral zone, gaining the zone, forechecking. It's all bad. Guys are looking lost as to where they're supposed to be. Passes are just off the mark. Guys are fumbling pucks. They're just regularly failing to retrieve dump-ins and get the puck out of the zone with control, get a rush chance going, or even just not turning it, settling for the simple don't turn the puck over in bad spots. They're not doing it right now. And we talk about all the time how important transition is. It's one of those little things that kind of happens that people don't, really think of as being a huge impact, but it does. And when you think of, your team getting pinned in the zone, or it seems like they're not getting into the offensive zone, it's because they're failing in transition 9 times out of 10. And there are just so many moments in which they're not able to sustain pressure and keep possession inside the offensive zone because they just don't. It's been a bunch of facepalm watching some of their film. And that leads to them just not being able to make controlled zone entries. That stifles offense. And then it's just a vicious cycle from of failing going all around the Silver Knights. And now it's early in the season. There are some new faces, and overall, they're the 7th least experienced team in the AHL in terms of professional hockey games played, according to Elite Prospects. So they're not necessarily a young team, but they're not a team that has a lot of games under their belt. So I expect their transition game to improve with some more time. However, this looked a lot worse than your usual October oopsies kind of sloppiness that you see around professional hockey this early in the season from basically everyone. I'm definitely concerned about the number of just bad turnovers or very nearly bad turnovers. There were a bunch of like passes from the top of their circle in the defensive zone that were trying to be stretch passes to the opposite blue corner of the blue line that like just missed somebody's stick and were a basically guaranteed scoring chance. I'm definitely concerned there. It also seemed like a number of times the team as a whole, but especially the defense, has just wilted under what looks like light forechecking pressure to me. Mm-hmm. They're also just getting burnt like an Irishman on South Beach on the forecheck too. They're just routinely doing nothing to stop teams from flying through the neutral zone with possession. And when they do force dump-ins, they're not turning them into offense going the other way. Again, vicious cycle. And it's one that if I'm Manny Vivros, I'm making this a huge priority in practice to get right, because I do not want to have this problem linger any longer than it has to. Because if there is one common denominator we've seen with teams that are just capital B bad at the end of the season, it's transition. I remember watching Tucson and San Diego and Bridgeport, or a couple years ago when Binghamton was in the league, and that like trash fire season that Binghamton had. All the big common denominator for all of them is transition. They cannot take a dump in into a zone exit, into a zone entry, and get through the neutral zone. It's just a mess, and that's one of the big reasons those teams end up just continually shooting themselves in the foot. So the fact that Henderson's been terrible at it this year is something they need to fix, and fix yesterday, because that is something that is, I think, will get better with just time, but I don't want to take that chance if I'm Manny Vivros in this step. I want to make sure we are drilling in breakouts, zone entries, forechecking for as many practice hours as they will let me.
So usually with teams, offense is sort of ahead of the defense in terms of gelling together as teammates, finding success, and helping drive success for their teams this early in the season in October. Henderson's special teams look like the total opposite of that, though. Their power play is 30th in the AHL in raw percentage at 12.8%. The PK is second in the AHL in raw percentage, 91.3. What have you been seeing from both sides there?
Well, let's start with the easier one to explain here. I've always been a fan of the way the Knights have played on the penalty kill, even when the results haven't been there, because I guess you could say, pun intended here, they live and die by the sword. They live by the sword, they die by the sword when it comes to pressure on the penalty kill in previous seasons. They were going to be in your face, and that makes turnovers easier. It takes away time and space from the power play that you're up against. It also opens you up to chasing the play and getting scored on. So it always seems like they needed to find that balance between dialing up the pressure to 11 at every moment and not doing what bad penalty killing teams do, which is basically just surrender time and space to the best offensive players on the other side and hoping that you can cover the slot. That like never works. And I remember, I think it was last year, I had a running Twitter thread of screenshots where it's like, let's just watch Alex Holtz and hope our laser vision melts him as he rips this wrist shot right past. But the Knights seems like they have found that balance of pressuring at the right times, retreating at the right times, not getting caught chasing the play, but managing to funnel opposing power plays into corners and then swarming them with pressure. It seems like they've managed to find that balance so far. Will they be able to hold that? That's we'll wait and see. On the power play, though, shockingly, those transition problems 5-on-5 have not vanished on the power play unit. I'm sure if you're a Silver Knights fan listening to this, you can instantly think of a handful of times the Knights are on the power play and they just cannot gain the offensive zone. And some of that is because they're executing the double drop play that teams use for the zone entry. Like, they're just bad at it. And we've explained how this is supposed to work before, and I felt like it was very getting into the weeds. So I'm not going to do that deeply here, but we'll just say, when you're that first guy carrying the puck up in the double drop play, your job is to push that first forechecker as far into the neutral zone as possible. And then you turn around and pass it backwards to the two guys that are behind you. If you've watched the Knights on the power play, you've seen this play at least 36 times, and you've also seen that first dude is barely getting to his defensive zone blue line. That is not setting his teammates up for success. So shockingly, they're struggling to gain the zone afterward, and it looks like a gong show. The power play, though, has gotten better once they've gained that offensive zone, though. Earlier in the season, they'd gain the zone and just start looking flustered, like they weren't sure where they were supposed to be, what they were trying to accomplish. They were just kind of passing the puck around the perimeter and hoping that something good just came from that. Shockingly, it didn't. But now they're at least starting to set up. They're looking more dialed in. They're setting up plays and generating actual scoring chances. And some of that, I think, is just coming from more chemistry. You're seeing guys like Sheldon Rempel finally start to find his groove with his teammates, especially along the half wall. He's starting to feed pucks into the middle, find open spaces. Look no further than Brennan Brisson's power play goal from the last game. Cormier holds Spencer Smallman and Eustace and Noonan with his eyes, dishes the pass right into the wheelhouse for Brisson, and he just crushes it like Mark McGuire playing slow pitch beer league softball. That's something that you wanted to see more of earlier on, but I understand a lot more young players. Brisson is barely drinking age, I think. Cormier's young too. Like, you're not going to see those guys just step in and be great right away. So the fact that we're seeing them at least, 7-8 games into the season, having, some progress being made and little things like that, I think is encouraging. But of all the things going wrong on the Knights right now, the power play is the one I'm most confident is going to get fixed. There's just too much talent on the ice for this to stay that bad consistently. So I'm seeing some small steps forward. But yeah, their transition problems are going to keep going if they don't figure out how to execute 5-on-5 or 5v4. So that's going to be something they need to get it together on, but that is a bigger problem than just on the power play. All right. I think that's all for the hard-hitting hockey things that we need to do. Let's have some fun. Sarah, you ready for some start bench ship?
Let's do it.
All right. We got three start bench ship here for you today. Our first one is going to be some goalies that we've actually already talked about on the episode. Calvin Pickard, Max Lagacé, or Antoine Bibeau. I take it back. We didn't talk about any of those goalies today. I think I was dreaming about them earlier. So, Sarah, we'll start with you here. Start bench ship, Calvin Pickard, Max Lagacé, Antoine Bibeau. Who are you going with?
So my start pick is a total homer pick. I'm going to start with Max Lagacé. Watched him for a couple years in Chicago, talked to him. Very nice young man. I would feel bad if I did anything else other than start him because he was a nice goaltender to talk to. Cal Pickard, bench him. I think he's fine. I alluded to him when we talked a little bit about Grand Rapids. He didn't have a very great night, so didn't want to throw him entirely under the bus. But bench him, ship Antoine Bibeau. He is a goaltender who exists.
I think for me, I like Max Lagacé a lot more in terms of I think he's the most consistent of the three. But I'm going to reach for ceiling here. I'm going to start Calvin Pickard. I feel like he's the goalie who I can trust to steal me games more. That we talked about with Vucale, that 3-2 blow it to steal it ratio, or steal it to blow it ratio. I feel like his is closer to 3-1. And I remember we made a meme last year that we never ultimately got to use. That was him dressed as, I think it's Sisyphus rolling the big stone up the hill, where it's like he would make 39 saves on 41 shots, and Grand Rapids would lose 2-1. And it was just we're rolling Calvin Pickard out here again to lose a game 2-1 or 3-2 or something, where he played out of his mind and just could not get goal support. So I'm taking Calvin Pickard to start. I'm benching Max Lagacé. I like him a lot too. I think he's been a very good, consistent goaltender that every once in a while he'll pull out how did Max Lagacé make 41 saves on 42 shots to steal a game? Antoine Bibeau, when Antoine Bibeau was on, he is on. But because he's a goalie that's always relied heavily on his athleticism as opposed to technique or anything like that, he's either going to play a game that he's going to shut the other team out or leave, one goal on the ice, or he's going to give up 6 in the first 10 minutes. There's very little in between with him. So that's a dude I don't want that kind of madness on my team. I'm shipping him to the coast. All right, second one. We might get into some trouble here with this. We're going to go former teams. the Binghamton Devils, the San Antonio Rampage, and the Utah Grizzlies. I will take this one first since I dished it to you, Sarah, last time. I am 100% starting the San Antonio Rampage. I think it is very bad that the Texas Stars are basically on their own stupid island in the middle of what could be a very fun Central Division for them and others. Like, there's no more Oklahoma. There's no more San Antonio. There's, basically their closest team is what, Rockford? Like, that's a ridiculous trip for them. And I think it was better when they played San Antonio. And yes, they played San Antonio a bunch, but like, those games were fun. I also thought, San Antonio is a very good city. They never, even though that team was never really excellent, they always had good crowds. It would be a place that if I was ever in San Antonio, I would stop and, try and see a game if I could. I'm benching Utah here only because I can't start both of them. I think Utah is a very good city for the AHL too. It also fits neatly kind of into like that middle between like where Calgary is and the mountain, like the Colorado area. It's a good kind of in between the two of them. And I think would be a good fit to bring back to the AHL. They also had great attendance. Salt Lake City, despite being surrounded by nothing and full of Mormons, is actually a pretty fun city. Another place that if I happened to be in and there was a game there, I would go to it. I'm shipping Binghamton to the ECHL. I don't think I have made any qualms about how much I did not like Binghamton. Like, it's a small city. It's that arena was built in like the 70s and has not been really touched up in a significant way since. Like, Binghamton started to be a little nicer, but compared to San Antonio and Utah, just nope, you're the short end of the stick here. And their fans were very, very grumpy. And they also never really drew massive crowds. And yeah, the arena only holds like 40,000 or 4,000 people, but like they never felt like they were consistently able to fill the building. And I'm not here for that. So Sarah, your shot. How are you taking this?
We are magically on the exact same wavelength here. I am starting the San Antonio Rampage. The whole thing where they stopped existing was kind of hilarious because literally like weeks before Vegas announced that they were buying the team and then immediately killing it, was the AHL All-Star game and the sort of state of the league speech that was given. And, we were assured during that media availability that like, no, like nothing's in the works. We don't have like all of it, like all of those rumors that you're talking about just totally untrue, blah, blah, blah. And then literally like the next, like right after the AHL All-Star game and like all the media leaves town and everyone goes back home. It's like, oh, by the way, Vegas has bought this team and killed it. And just felt really bad for the people I knew like in San Antonio and, seeing how dedicated that fan base was, even though the Rampage weren't good, seeing that building still be packed. I just felt bad. Also, like Vegas, just stop being mean, Vegas. So start the San Antonio Rampage. Utah, I would bench them similar to you because you can't start all of them. Utah is like you said, it's a market that should exist for hockey. I know the Kings have been doing a lot of work. They do like a preseason game every year now in Salt Lake City, and get really good crowds for that and have kind of made that their thing now. And I have visited Salt Lake City. I liked it way more than I thought I was going to like it. I found all the weird people like in Salt Lake City. And I was like, oh, okay, you are here. It's not just like people who made me feel bad. I honked at a Mormon and I felt really bad that they weren't turning and the light was green. Like, come on, let's go. Ship Binghamton. Why? Just why? Why are they? No.
The AHL's left them 3 times. I feel like we've learned our lesson.
Right. Let's move on from them. It's done.
Yeah. And I think too, like it's a market that feels a better size for the ECHL or for the pretend league they have there now that we will not dignify with name. Let us go on to our last one here. And that is promotional nights. So we got 3 common promotional nights that you see across minor league hockey. One is Pucks and Paws. The other is Superhero Night. And the last is the school day game, I think one of which happened today on Wednesday. I forget who it was, though, but I did catch a piece of it. Anyway, Sarah, I will kick it to you first. Start, bench, ship. Pucks and Paws superhero nights or school day games?
I am absolutely starting Pucks and Paws. It is the most magical night in hockey. I love seeing the little dogs and their little feet on the ice. Also as someone involved in animal rescue, I think that's also really great to like have adoptable animals and get people involved. Pucks and Paws is like whoever first came up with that, I would like to shake their hand because you have brought two of the things that I love most, animals, hockey, together into one place, and that is amazing. Superhero night, bench, whatever. It's just a chance for children to scream a lot and play really loud clips from like superhero movies that they all yell at, but fine, whatever. I am shipping the school day game because they get it's 10,000 screaming school children, and there's a reason that I live by myself with cats and I don't have children. It's because I don't no thank you. Every time I go to one, I leave with like a migraine. There's so much screaming. It's also like 10,000 children off key singing the Star Spangled Banner, which also as a musician, like as someone with a music background, hurts me deeply. I understand why they exist for a reason. That's great, but no thank you.
Oh, we are going to have some fun with my answers here. I am going to go in the reverse order.
What?
I am shipping Pucks and Paws night.
What?
I will explain this because,
immediately.
as you know, I am a dog owner. I love my dog, and I am a big dog person. I've taken my dog twice to Pucks and Paws night. I am shipping it absolutely 100%. Now, I agree. Like, I forget what team it was. I think it was an SPHL team. I want to say the Roanoke Rail Yard Dogs that used to have like an adopted dog of the game, and they partnered with like the local SPCA, and they did that. And I think that's a very good venue for that. I think Pucks and Paws can be good for that. But here's the thing I'm going to say. Pucks and Paws, like the staff in the building is never well prepared for Pucks and Paws, ever. Like, and how could you be? It's like 10,000 dogs in the building, and they shit everywhere. Like, and no one's, and like all of the owners too, it's like, oh, that's nice. Your dog just pooed right in the middle of the aisle. Bye.
Surprise.
Like one dog barks, and they're setting off a howl. It's a thing then. And that's like, I'm trying to watch a game and I can't like keep my dog from barking because every other dog in the arena is now barking for literally no reason. Not to mention too, like most of the goal celebrations terrify your dog. So then that's just more dog excrement and barking everywhere. It's like you had good intentions with this night. You really did. And I think that there are cases where they do good things with adopting and all of that. But like overall, it does not come together well. I feel like it's one of those things where it was a great concept and the execution, I've been to several of them, has never been good. I'm going to bench superhero night. I wanted to ship superhero night because I feel like it's been done so many times, and it's done by every team every year, and they have like the same 4 specialty jerseys that it's like you can no longer show me something from a superhero night that I haven't seen 5 other teams do either identically well or better. So like, not to mention too, man, is there too much like. I remember when like Marvel and DC first started coming out with movies and they were fantastic and everyone's hype. And now it's been a couple years and I'm just like, oh my God, we're still doing like 10 of these every other month. Like it has now gotten to the point where I'm so oversaturated by superhero stuff that I don't care. Like it's a cheap and easy one for you guys, but like I'm starting the school day game. Like, I understand you have very legitimate reasons to hate the school day game. It is 10,000 screaming kids at 10 a.m. But, like, there is not a better grow the game event that you can have. Like, and especially, too, like, if you're a team that's not from the, the richest, most gentrified neighborhoods, this is a chance where some of these kids who may never have been exposed to hockey are going to get to see. Not to mention, I mean, who doesn't want to skip math class on a Tuesday so you can go see a hockey game? I think that's the players, as much as they don't really enjoy the 10 a.m. start time to this, which I don't blame them for, seem to at least enjoy the stadium, the atmosphere, because if nothing else, it is loud. Like, yeah, I understand your ears are ringing at the end, but like, I think it's a good event, and the benefits outweigh some of the, inner ear damage that you're going to accept from this game. So I'm starting the school day game.
All right, you got me. That's a good point. I'll allow it.
All right. I think that's all we got for right now. Sarah, start us out.
All right, that is indeed it. So thank you all so much for watching and or listening to today's show. The Calder Farmstead is a part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and several other great hockey sports and sports entertainment programs all at www.fullpresscoverage.com. Just click the podcasts drop-down menu in the top right portion of the website and enjoy.
And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon, please rate and review the podcast. If you want to give us 1 star and say, these guys suck, his hat is ugly, I'm totally fine with that. I can accept that kind of criticism. But doing so helps others find the show, and your reviews, we actually read them, do help us improve it. You can also follow the show on social media where we post the memes at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at the Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more, including our merch store, which you can buy this fun hat or some sweatshirts, maybe a t-shirt. We have stickers even. If sticking stuff is your thing, you can do that there. All of that can be found in our Linktree page at linktr.ee/thecalderfarmstead. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION. So we can make music for you too. Sarah, where can people find you?
So my name is Sarah Avampato. You can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at Right Said Sarah. It's WRITE said Sarah with an H. If you get the joke, thank you. Congratulations. You're probably old too. You can also check out my writing at Full Press Hockey, where I talk about the Ontario Reign, or over at Canes Country, where I talk about the Chicago Wolves. Sean, where can people find you?
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SeanObrien 81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien_81. I swear we're going to get the Tableau page for my stats work up this week. My job is now about to hit the slow part of my cycle, so I will have the free time to do it. And I'm pretty sure I have the willpower. You can find that at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase, all lowercase, all one word. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the show. For Sarah Avampato, I am Sean O'Brien. One last time, please dump and chase responsibly.